So, shall we start the session?
Start give.
To
Yes,
acquire
ma'am.
knowledge, one must study. To acquire knowledge, one must study, but to acquire wisdom, one must observe. A very good evening to the esteemed guests and faculties present here. The Department of Accounting and Finance at SRM Institute of Science and Technology, Ramapuram, is pleased to present a comprehensive national level 3-week research methodology course. This course is meticulously designed to provide participants with essential knowledge and skills in research techniques, empowering them to conduct high quality academic and industry oriented research. The program targets academicians, research scholars, professionals, and students who aspire to enhance their research capabilities in the fields of finance, accounting, and allied disciplines. Let's commence the session with Tamil Taivarthu. I now request Dr. V. Deepa Ma'am, Program Coordinator at Department of Accounting and Finance, to present the welcome address.
Okay, on behalf of the Accounting and Finance Department, I welcome our resource person, Dr. Mukul Pandey, sir. And I also welcome in absentia our program coordinator, Dr. V. Deepa ma'am. And I also welcome our head of the department in absentia, Dr. Chitra ma'am. And Sundar sir, our Dean, Faculty of Science and Humanities Department.
Thank you, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, sir. You take over the session, sir. Yes, you are audible. Sir, you may start the session, sir.
Yeah, ma'am. I'm trying to share this slide.
Okay. Yeah, it's viewable, sir. Yes, we are able to view.
Is multiple screen coming up? Is the slide visible, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Good evening, everybody. First of all, I'm very thankful to ma'am for offering me this particular session. This session is focused on developing the questionnaire for survey. The questionnaire is the main crux of your research article. Basically, it decides the after you develop the hypothesis, you need to conduct the survey through the help of questionnaire. Questionnaire construction is the key of your research work. It is the factor which decide the reliability of the research. So the question has to be a well written and manageable questions where people can understand and give you the required data. Unless you design the right question, you will not be able to give the right analysis, and right results will not be obtained through analysis. So the first thing that you should focus is on how to develop the question, and how to develop the questionnaire. What should be the flow? What should be the content? And what should be the mode of asking questions? So and the second thing that is important is you should consider why use the survey method. What is the purpose of using the survey method? Why do you want this method to be adopted for your research? There are many issues that you need to consider, that you have to collect the right and clear response. The questions has to be meaningful and to be understood by the respondent in such a way that they will be able to reply to the questions being asked in a more clear form. Then there will be limiting responses, that you cannot give the responses options to the respondent which will be beyond the scope of your study. If you'll provide open-ended questions, you have to be very, very careful that the question should be asked in such a way that it should be focused to the objective of your study. Then the length of questions should not be very, very long, because people do not have the time to read the question or answer the question properly. So your question has to be crisp, simple, and small one, and should be intrusive. Means it should not be, there should not be a private questions or personal question to the respondent, because sometimes they will be hesitant in giving you the response to their personal questions. So the questions should be more and more journalistic in in approach and in tone both, so that the respondent feel free to respond to your questions. The procedure for development of question is to specify what information is being sought after. The respondent should be given a free hand to answer the question, but the surveyor has to take care that the required information which is required for the survey should be obtained by the questions. Now, what type of the questionnaire and what should be the method to administer that particular questionnaire, that is also very very important, so that the respondent feel good about answering the question. Sometimes what happens that the respondent is being asked a questions and he is not in a proper mood to answer, so you will not get the right response. So to get the right response and accurate response, you have to construct the question in such a way that the question should have meaning fully understood by the respondent, and it should be administered in such a way that the respondent feel that he is being given importance and significance of the response should be intact. At the same time, the researcher has to take care of the flow and sequencing of the question. The chronological order of the question should be in a right flow, so that the respondent also understand that this question being asked is more logical in sense and it is making sense. Then if you are asking one to one questions to any respondent individually, then the content of the questions should be in such a way that the respondent's sentiments are not touched. He should be open to answer each of the questions being asked. Let us say if you ask about let us say if you ask about the age, give a range: 15 to 25, 25 to 30, 35 to 45, 45 to 55, in such a way that respondent, if he is not willing to give his exact age, he should be giving a range, age in between that range, so he'll fall into one of the range. Similarly, if sometimes the respondents does not like to disclose his education qualification or earning, and you want the data for social status, for demographic data, these are the main parameters: age, income, and qualification. So that those individual questions should be designed in such a way that it should appear very very general for the respondent, and you have to take care of the sentiment and chronology of the question, sentiment of respondent and chronology of questions. They determine the form of response to each question, what type of response is being collected, whether it is in paragraph or it is in objective questions. Now, you have to determine the wording of each question in such a way that question should be simple, straightforward, and meaningful. And the respondent understand the question very well. So you have to be keeping it very simple and small. There are different forms of surveys or question asking. Sometimes you go for self-administered survey, where you can ask for the theoretical part. You can ask for text answer of the respondent. So he may write a story, he may write a paragraph, a page, maybe, and then you need to interpret what is being said by the respondent. Then there are sometimes you develop questions like objective questions, open-ended question, or you develop scales. There are different scale like Likert scale available, where you can ask the respondent to give selection of his choice amongst the range. Sometimes what happens, you ask for rating of one particular field of interest. Supposing, how do you like this sweet, or how do you like the story? Scale it between 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15, and 15 to 20. So in between 1 and 20, what is the liking of the respondent? Depending on that response, but it is subjective to the interest of the respondent what he says. Similarly, in the this is there could be a Likert scale question where you can ask him, give him a statement and ask him to give his options. Like, the truth is the last resort. So you agree, you do some disagree, in between agree and agree, sometimes agree, not decided, sometimes not agree, totally disagree. These kind of skills can be used. So what kind of administrative tool you are using, that is to be decided. Then sometimes people go for face to face interview of the people and collect the information. Here again, the interview has to be recorded either in document or in, today it is available, and it is very well available. Commonly available tools are like video cameras, and you can record the interview, and after the interview you can go back to the interview proper and collect the required information from there. Sometimes what happens, you conduct the interview survey by telephone service, telephone, and you ask the respondent some questions, and sitting on your table, you collect data about the responses that you want. Today, computer assisted or web based like Google Form, these kind of questionnaires are also developed. The It is the most easy way to conduct the survey. The moment you develop a link of Google Form, you can go to any geography anywhere in the world. That is the advantage of modern days research through Google Form. Second option on internet is you can develop a questionnaire and send it through through internet in email of the respondents, and then you can get responses through mail only. They will take a printout of the question, or they will type answer on the sequence of the chronology of questions, and they will respond you back. This computer assisted or the electronic media assisted surveys has created wonders in the field of research, because in less number of time you can approach many people, and your probability of getting answers increases. It saves a lot of time. The self-administered questions, the respondent complete on their own. They are best designed for measuring the variables with numerous value of response categories. Then investigating attitude and opinions not usually observable. The questions being asked are not clear to the respondents. Describing characteristics of a large population and studying private or difficult behaviors. In such situation, you can go for self-administered questionnaire. The response rate tends to be lowest for mailed questions, as low as 20 to 30%. Low response rate affects generalizability. When generalization is very small here, it is it requires more standardization of the questions and an increased reliability over other quality methods. in this self-administered because the response pattern can vary from person to person. Somebody may like to respond directly, somebody may not like to respond. There are close-ended item limit to the research and they adjust for differences in respondents. They clarify misunderstood items and explain ambiguity. These self-administered questions are not suitable. They cannot be used for all audience like visually impaired people or young children or learning or people with learning or reading disabilities. You cannot use self-administered questions where they will not be if they will not be able to comprehend the meaning of the questions, they will not be able to answer the question properly. This computer aided assisted on web-based questionnaires are they way to create administered and self-administered questions. Marketing researchers find response rates increase because in short time, as I said earlier, in short time you'll get many people. You can approach many people at one go. Questionnaires in computer-based or web-based can be sent via email and or provide internet link or to the site as I said for the Google Forms. This will increase the probability of large number of response when you use computer or internet based questionnaire. You can create own web page or hire commercial company through sites like hosted surveys and you can conduct the survey. It allows for instant data coding. It need not need to be able to write code for or use software. It will take less time and cost as I have said, and it gives access to huge issues and it affects generalizability of question because variation in computer ownership and uses it will depend on internet access to the questions. So those people who are not accessing the internet, they will not be able to answer on web-based surveys. The other form of the question data collection or questionnaires are asked in face-to-face or telephonic interview. These questions are unstructured or in-depth questions that we can see on most of the time that these kind of interviews are for exploratory research. They are either with one person or in focus groups that you can call somebody in a one seminar hall or one place and ask questions. Then there are open-ended items in interviews. It cannot be standardized. It is good for complex situation where data is limited. These interviews are structured and they consider the role of interviewer. It depends on the style and personal characteristics of the interviewer, how they ask question and how they attract people to answer positively. It influenced by the process. The training is critical here for the interviewer. He has to be properly trained for asking questions and he should be creating enthusiasm in the respondent for every question so that the next question is well accepted by the respondent. The wording of interviews should be very direct and understood by the respondent so that the proper responses are collected. And as I said, this whatever responses are coming, They has to be recorded. Every interview has to be recorded so that in future when the data is required, you can go back to the data collected or interview and and assimilate what is being discussed in the interview. The response rate for the interview to be highest because you get the word from the horse's mouth. You get the response. If the respondents are correct, then you get the right response. Fine. And but the limitation is you have smaller samples, costs are high, and you it consumes more time. So you have to be very selective when you want to use this method of data collection. The telephonic interviews are very popular in some of the industry. They are less costly, they consume less time, there's less subjective to the interview and interviewer, and as compared to face, this telephonic interviews are conducted in a very structured way and data is collected very fast. They are often conducted with computers and they can probe for information or clarifications. You should keep in mind that the telephone call should not be more than 20 minutes maximum. This is the threshold limit for telephonic interviews for survey data collection. The construction of the survey questionnaires should be regardless of the survey type. They should allow candid answers. They should be accurate and consistent, and they should address the goals of hypothesis that you develop in the research. So this should be taken care. The list, the at the conceptualization state of the survey, you should list the set of research questions and hypotheses and consider how others have measured. You should refer to the literature available and look how people earlier have collected the information. You should have at least one questionnaire item for each variable that you identify for your research purpose, and it what you have to establish through your hypothesis. Then you have to operationalize the concept that you have developed. You should outline what you want to cover. You should consider the attitude, behavior, and demographics of the respondents while developing the questions. Attitudes means how they will feel about your questions, what they will form, what kind of opinion they will have once you ask question to them. The behavior of respondent, if you ask them question, how they will respond, what actually they will feel. And the demographics means what they do, what they are, at what age, what qualification, what kind of earning, and what whether gender wise or otherwise, whatever demographic information you can collect, you can make use while forming the questionnaire. Then while measuring behavior, you translate the opinions into action. It is useful for making policy, improving working condition, and evaluation of programs. When you understand the respondent correctly, you will get the correct answer. And you will have your own opinion. You have to decide whether the respondent is of your purpose or not. And you have to measure what they want to say. In the demographics, you need to know how opinions and behaviors vary across different categories of people. So things like age, income, education, political beliefs, the orientation, gender, all these things matters for setting the platform for getting the response correctly. Then once the platform is set, then you have to develop an instrument, the questionnaire, in such a way that it is easy to answer. They should be simple and direct, what I have been saying in my presentation. Beginning of each section should include clear instruction. The Supposing if you are giving your questionnaire survey either in computer or in document, then you should begin each section in clear instruction what they have to do with the and how they have to answer. Let us say if you use range scale, then you have to say very clearly that this range to this range is the limit, the minimum limit and maximum limit. If you have Likert scale, you have to clarify what is in Likert scale and in this rating scale, both you have to clarify what is the how to answer, what is the meaning of lesser point and what is the meaning of higher point. Because supposing if you have to rate between 1 to 10, what does the 10 mean, whether you agree or slightly agree? The tens has the value of 10 has to be clear, value of 1 has to be clear. The 1 may be your complete satisfaction and 10 may be complete dissatisfaction. Fine. So this instruction has to be made very, very clear to the respondent for before making the questionnaire. Before making the questions, each sections, each question, you have to wherever you are using those skills, you have to clarify, clearly mention that. Then disclose needed information to respondent to decide whether to complete the survey or not. Fine. If some data is being asked to the respondent, you have to sometimes mention that why this information is relevant to your study. You have to consider the phrasing of questions. You don't have to be partial to the purpose. The respondent should be free to answer your questions, because in your study your priority is to fulfill the requirements of your hypothesis. But in respondent's eye, it does not matter. He has nothing to do with your hypothesis, but their opinion is for your objective of your study. So that opinion is important, and that opinion has to be very, very that opinion is very, very important for your study, because based on their opinion only you will make analysis and decisions about the variables that you have considered for your study. Then you have to decide what has to be anonymous and what has to be confidential. The name and ID, sometimes the respondents will not like to answer, so you have to take care of this factor in your study. Then in your study you cannot say that within this time I need information, within 10 minutes you have to complete this kind of things is not conducted in survey research. Then you have to conduct the information on submitting, means you have to conduct the survey in such a way that the respondent get information that the survey is completed. The instructions and format given in the questionnaire has to be uniform and consistent, that the flow has to be maintained in a very streamlined method, so that the respondent feel free to answer. I feel enthusiastic in answering the question. Before making the question, you have to decide, you have to first brainstorm within your team how to develop the question, what is the survey all about, how to frame the question, what is the objective, what is the hypothesis. Everything has to be logically thought over and developed. You have to sometimes presume and predict the behavior of respondent, so that you frame the right kind of question for respondents. Mind you, sometimes you conduct research for existing things, and sometimes you are conducting research for things which are not available or not in the knowledge of the respondents. Let us say, if you want in marketing, if you develop something of existing product and you want to do some augmentation, then the respondent will be knowing, and you, because they will be using the product. But supposing if you develop something which is new in the world, respondents will not be conceptualizing the things which are there in the world. Then how will you frame the question? That becomes very important. For you, your research, it is very meaningful, but for respondents, they have not seen it. They will, it will be difficult for them to conceptualize those things. So you have to brainstorm it properly, so that the respondents are asked proper questions and they assimilate what you want to ask them, and they should respond the right question, right answer, and you should be able to collect the exact information from them. Then you have to find out the list of items that are concerned to your research variables. What are the items which are connected with your research variables? You have to list out for making your questionnaire. You have to create an engaging survey. As I have already said, you have to keep the customer, keep the respondent happy while asking the responses. Then the list of length of questionnaire has to be in such a way that at the time of designing the questionnaire, you should assume the time required to answer the question completely. So time to construct the questionnaire, time to respondent to complete the question after understanding, then what will be the cost of construction and dissemination, what will be the total cost in terms of time and money both for conducting the question, and number of variables or concepts that you want to test. Then what kind of font and spacing and format you are making use in this particular survey questionnaire. That is very important, because it has lot of meanings in questionnaire writing. You have to describe the target and vocabulary and grammar to be properly surveyed, because sometimes people do not derive the right meaning that you intend to ask, because your grammar is not right. Fine. Sometimes what you do, you use some jargons for your studies, and the respondent do not understand it. That is also a problem. You have to use a right language. I am saying in a very mild way that if the customer has to understand, but you have to avoid the language that is familiar to you but might be not be your respondent. So you don't have to use abbreviations. Sometimes you know the meaning of the abbreviation, but your respondent may not be knowing the meaning of response, your abbreviation that you're using for your question. So that these things should be avoided in making question. Then you should avoid the ambiguity, confusion, and vagueness. You have to make sure it is absolutely clear, and what you are asking and how you want it to be answered. That has to be very, very clear in your question. Repeatedly read your question and comprehend what people can understand. Avoid indefinite words and response categories. Fine. This is how you should frame the question. You should not have emotional language or prestige bias leading to the questions. You should not ask question like what watch out for loaded words that have a history of being attached to extreme situations. Then you should watch for prestige markers that give the respondents to give the right answers. You cannot say ki like those who are kings can answer these questions. Those who are kings, you use this particular product. These kind of things are not, they should not be used. They are not answered properly. Then you should avoid leading questions also. You should avoid the loading questions with extra objectives and adverbs, because these extra adjectives and extra adverbs uh, deform the question purpose. You should avoid the double barreled questions. Make each question about one and only one topic. Every topic should be tapped by one question. Don't assume that respondents is an expert on themselves. You will have large variation of respondent. You don't know whom you are serving. Fine. So somebody may be expert, somebody may be layman. So you have to make both the range, both the people equal, and you have to conduct the survey. So this has the question has to be very, very simple, as I said. Then you should avoid asking questions beyond respondents' capability. People have cognitive limitations, especially when it comes to memory of past events. Fine. If it is pointless to ask people about things that are not natural ways to for them to think. Then you have to avoid false premises. You should avoid asking about future intentions. If like questions like if you can, you should avoid negative and especially double negatives questions. This is how you should develop the questions. Does anybody has any question? Anybody, any question, please?
No question, sir.
There's no question.
No questions.
Ma'am, yeah, you have my contact number. If anybody want to
Yes.
have any clarifications, since these are research
Sure,
scholars,
sure, sure,
if
sir.
they have any
Sure.
questions for this, they are free to ask me questions on my number.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. And it was a
Okay.
very informative session also, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
It was my part. My part. I'm very much thankful to you all for arranging this session for me. Thank you, ma'am. I may leave now,
Okay.
ma'am.
Wait, sir. There is a vote of thanks. Uh,
Fine.
yeah.
Fine.
Prakati, take over.
Truly illuminating. Gratitude can transform common days into thanksgiving, turn routine jobs into joy, and change ordinary opportunity into blessings. I request Pratiksha ma'am to propose the vote of thanks.
Good evening to one and all present here. As we mark to the end of today's session, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to Dr. Mukul Pandey, sir, Assistant Professor, Department of Commerce, Arka Jain University. Your present in this enlightening occasion and your perception was truly valuable. I extend my cordial gratitude to our program coordinator, Dr. V. Deepa ma'am, for instigating this conclave. I thank our HOD, Dr. Chitra Srinivasan ma'am, VP Admin and Academic sir, and our Dean Sir for their support in organizing this interesting 3 weeks research methodology course. And finally, I thank all research scholars and faculties for with their involvement. This occasion is a grand success. Once again, I thank you all for your presence and your dedication today. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.
We
Thank you,
are at the
ma'am.
end of the session. The Department of Accounting and Finance at SRM Ramapuram once again reaffirms its commitment to nurturing a robust research culture that aligns with global standards. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, everybody, for your time. Thank you, ma'am. I'm logging off now.